Welcome to Popternative, where we dive into topical discussions from the worlds of pop culture, social media, and sports. Here is your host, Peter Remoliotis, aka PD Beats.
Thank you both for your time.
Thank you.
Alexis, I feel like me and you can record a 1 hour podcast because I have so many questions about developing this into a feature. Because I find that so interesting, right? You know, it's a short and everything. Can you give me, I want to know if you know what I'm going to do here. Can you give me the bite-sized version of kind of your mindset of making this a feature very quickly? Like how do you extend it?
Yeah. Sure. Well, we made a short called Clock in 2020, and that was really about the moment that a woman's biological clock kicks in, you know, and you have to kind of choose between, you know, career and personal life, or you rather like have to see the compromises that are gonna come if you go down that road. And then when we developed it into a feature, it became about a woman who does not want children and feels the pressure from society and her family and culture enough so that she feels broken. You know, she compromises herself, and of course, you know, it all goes to hell from there.
Oh, absolutely. Dianna, in terms of, because one of my favorite things is, you know, this is labeled as a horror and a psychological thriller, and I'm watching this as an audience member, and I feel like it's split right down the middle. I love the horror elements of this film. I love the psychological thriller. Reading the script, not watching it playback, did it read kind of like I'm talking about, like a 50-50? Did you kind of gravitate more towards the psychological thriller, the horror? Like, what was it like reading the script for Clock specifically?
The entire experience. I loved the minute I finished reading it, I knew that I would be so lucky to put my foot in the sandbox. And Alexis and I had such a lovely, full conversation about what this character, what she would be experiencing, how we would be making this film. And from that point on, it was just exciting. And we put it together really, really fast. It was just like greenlit, and then it was go time. And so that in itself allowed for a lot of excitement because we didn't have that much time, and Alexis was the most prepared and ready to tell the story, and it didn't feel like she hadn't had all the time in the world to prep this, but we had such an incredible time making this film together, and it was a quick shoot, but we got everything that we wanted, and it was just so wonderful to watch Alexis orchestrate this entire sequence because there were so many moving pieces and there were so many things to be in control of.
Absolutely. And to kind of add to that a little bit, Alexis, I find it interesting because preparation mindset wise, you kind of hit it perfectly in the beginning of the interview about, you know, the goals of a lot of these characters and and the whole kind of goal of, you know, being a mother, being a parent and everything. But one thing about this film that I think lingers throughout the whole thing, because there's new ways to scare people with like the horror thriller kind of aspect, is like the uncomfortable feeling you get as an audience member. Like there's something off for a lot of this movie. You know what I mean? So is that something too that's kind of like, there's a lot of themes and things you want to kind of throw in there, but like you want to make the audience like uncomfortable. Like that's like the point, I feel like, right?
Correct. Absolutely. Like, you know, that it should be this feeling of discomfort, you know, and this feeling that something is wrong. That's exactly correct. And I said to my DP, you know, I want it to feel like we're in a beautiful nightmare the whole time. You know, that was the vibe that we were going for visually. And there were a lot of things that we did to try to accomplish that, like off feeling, especially after she goes to the clinic and decides to do certain procedures, you know, even just the decision from this one moment to go from studio to handheld, you know, and so now we're like, you know, jarred. And then of course we do something with color throughout the movie, you know, so that we're always just feeling like this doesn't feel right to me, you know, ever when she makes the decision to go against herself. And I think that that's really the true horror of the film, is watching a woman go against her better instincts over and over and over again, you know, watching somebody, you know,
decide to not live their authentic life. That to me is where the true horror lies. And we were just trying to visually support that, with our cinematography and production design throughout.
It's got slow burn moments, but it also has those kind of moments where the pace kind of feels like an audience member, you're panicking a little bit. And I feel like you did an amazing job here. Dianna, it's interesting because Shiva Baby's not a horror movie, but that movie kind of made me very kind of like freaked out in a lot of moments. There's a lot of little things in that movie. So like, I'm just curious, like, are you a big fan of a lot of these kind of movies that are throwing in a lot of kind of things and elements and genres? Because, Clock is, psychological thriller, horror. Movie like Shiva Baby is more of kind of a drama and everything. But a lot of these movies have a lot of elements kind of thrown in where there is genre bending components in them. With Clock as well, I feel like.
Yeah, tension.
Yeah, tension.
And both films, what drew me to both of those films was besides, the characters and the directors in place. I love Emma and I love Alexis, is that these were films that were talking about what it is to be a woman, what it is to be a young woman with expectations of what she's going to do next, with the expectations of a woman who has made a choice not to have a child. I think these are stories that really resonate and I connect with. Mm-hmm. And therefore, other versions of these films could have also been appealing, but these versions of these films felt very appropriate and things I wanted to immediately say yes to. And I think it's always pretty obvious that after one read, whether you have something to offer the piece or not. And then when it works out and goes in your favor, it's just wonderful because you get to live in that world and experience what it is to tell those stories fully.
There's actually a lot of similarities with both those films because both those films also were short films that were developed into features as well.
Yes, and for my part, I absolutely consider Shiva Baby a horror film. I watched it and
I told someone that. It's funny because we watch trailers these days and I feel like I'm I'm 50-50 with trailers because I love going in fresh. So I remember watching that movie not knowing much about it, knowing that it was like a short and everything. And like at the end of that movie, I'm like, yeah, I think you could say this was like a horror film. Like I'm freaked out, you know what I mean? But with Clock, it's one of those films that like I said, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I'm really intrigued when there's something off and then we're finding out why it's off. You know what I mean? Like Alexis, you know what I mean by that? Because the plan is you're going to watch it. There's something off, right? Yeah. So I wanted to kind of ask you from the creative perspective, Alexis, what would you say is like, and you can talk about specifically, Clock, but what is like, in your opinion, from the writing directing perspective, one of the biggest challenges, would you say, in terms of kind of putting something together? Is it balancing the directing and the writing? Is it just kind of making sure everything kind of goes in the direction it's supposed to? Like, is there something challenge obstacle wise that you can bring up from the creative perspective?
Yeah, I think every project has, its different set of challenges. I would say with this one, probably just the speed with which it was greenlit. It was greenlit, and then 2 weeks later, I was in Austin prepping. And so putting together something so quickly, and having a rather short shoot. There's just the pressure to go and get it right, and but also not make compromises, to just fight for, for example, like I think one of our biggest challenges in Clock was piecing together the clinic, right? Because we didn't have the means to build. So it was like, well, how are we going to piece together this world that feels visually the same and not super patchwork? And I think we ended up using 3 different dermatology offices, a private residence, and like a popular wedding venue, that all became this, one cohesive location for us. So I think that was one of our biggest challenges, and just not giving up the fight, seeing the fight through all the way to the bitter end, even though it gets tiring, you just got to fight every day.
Totally. And people are going to be able to stream Clock on Hulu April 28th. Thank you both for your time. It was really great chatting with you both.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube. Be sure to like Popternative on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.